here we are, everyone, and we're doing an update on my good friend and brother in the faith, Kelly Hale. How are you, bro?
I'm doing great, Shade. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing okay. I'm doing all right, especially hearing about the absolute fact that my good friend and brother is still fighting the fight of the true laws of this land, of the true laws of Canada, and you are using still the Canadian Bill of Rights to continue battling your case. If you don't mind, as briefly as you can, but still to the point, can you introduce your issue and what happened with your situation a little bit?
Well, yeah, obviously, those most know by now that my business, Jack Tuesday Sports Pub in Kingston, was taken by force by the government for not complying with the, as I call them, illegal mandates. So we've had many court dates fighting different things throughout the past year or so. Last Tuesday, we had our appeal in divisional court for the public order 22 closure of my business. Now, in that appeal, we focused on mainly the Bill of Rights and how they've violated many of my rights. We talked about 1A, the right to due process of law. Also in 1A was the enjoyment of property, which they came and took from me at 5:30 in the morning with the SWAT team. And 1D, which is freedom of speech, which me putting my sign up outside saying no to vax passports, all welcome at Jack's, was my right to do so. And all those rights have been violated through my Canadian or our Canadian Bill of Rights. So that's what we've stood on. And once again, in this appeal, we focused on that. And that's what we're using to push through.
And just so everyone understands that Kelly is not using the charter, because we've been arguing for well over 2 years now that the charter has not been ratified, and you went on record saying so because one of the judges asked you point blank, well, why aren't you using the charter? Am I correct on this?
Exactly. Yeah.
And your response was?
My response was, yeah, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms has not been ratified. And I'm standing by the bill. And he said, thank you for your answer. You know, like I'm guessing if it was ratified, a panel of 3 judges, I'm guessing one of them would have known and talked more about it, that you're wrong and it has been ratified. The fact that they did not dispute that at all tells me that I'm pretty sure we're right on this one.
We are indeed accurate. Just in case anyone needs to know this, basically ratified means all 10 of the provinces needed to have signed this piece of poo-poo legislation called the Charter, and they didn't. So therefore, it was never made ratified. And if you look at the Canadian Bill of Rights, on the other hand, it got what they call ascension, and that's being ratified, where every single province in this land signed that bill in 1960. So once again, you're making the point that, well, if you were incorrect, one of the judges would have said, what are you talking about? But they didn't. So that tells me they more than likely indeed do know. And if they don't know, they must have known enough to say, we better look into this. And at the end of the day, regardless, it still doesn't change the fact that you don't have to use the charter, because you can use the Canadian Bill of Rights for your civil liberties. Now, the reason why this is a big deal is because the Canadian Bill of Rights has absolutely no loopholes. And that's a big deal because the charter, as we've talked about many times, Kelly, has a section 1 in the charter that says basically the government can limit your rights if they want to. And they can limit your rights, and that's what they essentially did. Now, by you using the bill and not using the charter, they don't have that section, because the Bill of Rights basically says you can't violate anybody's rights, but for, let's say, the criminal code. In other words, if someone says, well, I have freedom of religion, so I get to go break people's windows, well, there's a problem because you broke the criminal code. However, if you want to sing songs at noon in a building, right, then that's absolutely fine, proven by the fact that we've had, churches for a long time in this country, and, no one told you couldn't go and pray at noon or sing songs at 11 a.m., right? So that is a violation of one of your civil liberties. Now, just to make this also clear, lots of people would say, well, see, you can't use the Bill of Rights for provincial bylaws, right? And we've been arguing that's not true because civil liberties are a federal matter. And as soon as you go to enforce a municipal or provincial or federal law, it if it comes against my civil liberties, I indeed can use the Canadian Bill of Rights. And that's what you're doing.
Yes, and during that last hearing, one of the judges even tried to tell me that the charter supersedes the Bill of Rights, and I'm like, no, it does not. Like it just doesn't. So
So,
they were trying to fool me and just trying to intimidate me and bully me. Specifically, one of the judges was very, very in the mood to pick a fight and tell me I was basically didn't know what I was talking about and why am I here wasting the court's time. But at the end of the day, I stood against it and didn't waver. And by the grace of God, we got that whole book of authorities read in on the record, which they did not want.
now the main thing now is you, along with the help of Dave Freedom, right? Our buddy Dave, who found all kinds of case law proving that people were using the Bill of Rights when they were hammered with municipal and or provincial bylaws that they felt were against their civil liberties. Now, this is the point. Win or lose, the point is they were able to use the bill. Not one judge said, well, you can't use the bill for provincial stuff. Not one judge said, well, you can't use the bill for municipal stuff. No, no, no. No issues there at all. Go ahead, use the bill. If you're claiming they violated your rights, you can use the bill. And now, between Dave Freedom and Jane Scarf, who's a paralegal, we've got the case law to prove that you can use the Bill of Rights, and you should use the Bill of Rights because it has no loopholes if someone has violated your civil liberties. Please.
Yeah, because I want, because right at the start of that hearing, when I read in my opening statements about why I'm using the Bill of Rights, and the one judge got quite angered, and he was trying to tell me that, you're here wasting our time. Justice Mew told you on 2 separate occasions the bill does not apply. He said, I don't know why you think we're going to see it any differently. Well, I got that case law written in and on the record, so they have to see it differently now, Shade.
We're going to pull it up right now. And so right here, we got a 1970 case law, and you can see that the person brings in, it was a form of traffic ticket complaint, okay, currently used under regulation pursuant to the Highway Traffic Act. Okay, so bottom line is this is a Highway Traffic Act issue. And just for sake of time, she's saying, hey, you guys violated my Bill of Rights. That's what she's saying. And therefore, and you might say, well, did she win? Did she lose? No, don't get distracted. I don't even know. I just got this today. But that's not the point. The point is, no one says she can't use the Bill of Rights, unlike the judges that were saying to you, Kelly, well, you're wasting the court's time. It doesn't apply here. Well, wait a minute. If the Bill of Rights applies to a Highway Traffic Act, which is clearly provincial, right? And this was in Alberta, by the way, I believe.
Yeah, and that's all we were trying. That's all we needed to prove here. Doesn't matter who won or lost the case. We had to prove that it wasn't just for federal use, that for municipal, for provincial, that it does apply because of everybody's civil liberties. And we've proved that beyond a shadow of a doubt with this case law.
And we have several others, don't we?
Yes.
This isn't the only one. So, and again, for sake of time, we will, by the way, provide the link to this case law for anyone who's interested. And I got to tell you, if you're a Canadian citizen in this country, you want this link and you want the Canadian Bill of Rights because you can self-represent very easily with the Bill of Rights. And if you believe in any shape, way, or form, our government has come against your civil liberties, or quite frankly, anyone has come against your civil liberties, you can use the Bill of Rights regardless of whether it's against if it's a municipal bylaw violation, if it's a provincial violation, it doesn't matter. As soon as it's civil liberties, it becomes federal. So let's pull up the other 1970 case law.
And the other cool thing, Shade, too, is that the Bill of Rights, you can cite it at any moment, at any time, unlike the Charter, where you have to, it has to be a charter challenge to be brought forth. And then that's a whole separate bag of worms right there, as we know. But even in my one court case, I think it was November 12th, with Justice Mew, I said, you're bound by the Bill of Rights right now too. And he didn't disagree. These people know that it applies, and they just know how damaging it is to their cases, like right now. So that's why they're so afraid of it, right?
I love it. I love it. And we need to inform everyone, and especially for not only our generation, but the generation coming, because they don't realize, because this was brought in as a federal statute for a reason. Every province in this country agrees that these civil liberties are for everyone in Canada, not just specific provinces. No. That's why Mr. Diefenbaker, who brought this in 1960, that's why he made it federal, because civil liberties are federal. They're trying to convince people that, well, in the province, it's not. Well, that doesn't make any sense. If I have freedom of speech in one province, I have to have it in another. But they've been trying to brainwash everyone into thinking that that's not true. But it has to be. It's common sense. If I've got freedom of assembly, protesting, or freedom of religion, or equality before the law and due process of law, things of that nature, or enjoyment of property, which, by the way, a little side note, is only in your Bill of Rights. It's not in the Charter at all. Okay? Period. And that's a fact. So if you want enjoyment of property, and I have to tell you, you want enjoyment of property. Okay. You have to. So for example, when they were telling us you can't have Christmas dinner with your extended family, that was a violation of enjoyment of property, period. And you can use the bill to battle that. So if you had a fine from the province or your municipality, you can battle it with the Bill of Rights. So for example, here, this is a provincial violation in this case law. And we'll supply the link for this one as well, guys. As you can see, it's 1970, again, after the bill, which came into federal statute law in 1960. And of course, charter is non-existent. So what were people using? They were using the Bill of Rights.
Exactly. And it's important to mention too, before I forget, that the irony in all of this from day one, I've said right from the start, this has never been just about my business or me. It's always been much bigger. I mean, basically what happened to me on November 13th at 5:30 in the morning was a home invasion. Okay? Is exactly what it was. And the people that are opposed to what I'm doing, I'm standing up for their rights too, because if it doesn't end at the front door of my business, a small business in a small town, where does it end? How long is it going to be before they're knocking on our front doors and coming and taking everything? And we have no recourse. And that's what I'm standing up to here. This isn't just about my business. It's way bigger. And I hope those people ultimately realize that that's why I took this stand, and it's so much bigger than just me and my business.
Yeah, because essentially what you're saying is, well, if I can't enjoy my property, then you won't be able to enjoy yours. That's what you're saying. And that's why you're standing up against this. And that's also why we're pointing out that Mr. Trudeau Sr., who brought in the poo-poo charter, is the one who put in that Section 1 to give them the right to violate your rights. And that's why it didn't get ratified as far as I'm concerned. And that's why you, Canadian citizens, no one, and I don't care what your lawyers tell you, by the way, I don't mind telling you that. Now, I'm not a lawyer. Kelly's not a lawyer, but he's self-representing. And if I needed to self-represent myself, I'm using the bill. If you violate my rights, I'm using the bill. You do what you want, but we're going to prove to you, though, that this bill has no loopholes, and we're going to prove to you you can use it for bylaws. And here's another one. So this was in City of Vancouver, and it says anti-noise bylaw, and that's what was violated. And to make a long story short here, we'll provide the link, but there was someone that was basically claiming that it was their freedom of religion to basically make some noise on the street. It had to do with some kind of, banging some drums and some cymbals. It's not my faith, but it was his. So he argued.
This is the Hare Krishna one, isn't it?
It is. It is.
Yeah.
And so he lost in provincial court, but then he took it up. And here's a great section here. He used the Bill of Rights as the point to fight a provincial noise bylaw. He used it. He was not denied being able to use it. You can use it. So now it's just a question of, did they really violate your rights, or were you doing something that you shouldn't have done? right? So again, we go back to the idea that I say, well, I have freedom of religion. So at 4 o'clock in the morning, I want to go around breaking people's windows. It's like, well, we've got a criminal code that says that that's vandalism. So, we don't care about your religion now. You violated the criminal code. But tell me how a pastor violated the criminal code because he had, I don't know, 100 people in his 10,000 square foot building, and he had 100 people in there singing, "We love God." Right? That's never been a violation of the criminal code in this country, and it still isn't. And therefore, anybody telling them they weren't allowed to do that was violating their civil liberties. And that's the point that we're making here. So take a look here that the provincial court had said, no, you broke the noise bylaw. Well, take a look here. In the Superior Court, they said that the learned judge erred in holding that any crime had been committed at all, or by the appellant, that the learned judge erred in ignoring the provisions of the Canadian Bill of Rights, and that the City of Vancouver and its bylaws are without jurisdiction. It means outside of their jurisdiction in this matter. Why? Because a province can't take away your freedom of religion. For example, another judge saying, at least at this stage, I say that the preamble to the B&A Act 1867 is far more in favor than against the appellant's position. That is to say that freedom of religion is a federal rather than a provincial matter. Okay? Very, very plainly stated that our civil liberties are federal. Period. So I think we've done a good job of making that point. Again, we'll provide the link to this one as well. And I'm going to go ahead and point out the scripture. Ephesians 5:11. Expose the evil, expose the darkness. And you don't expose it if you play the game. If you play the game, that's how we got here. And you refuse to play the game. And I think that's where God really, strengthened you and is using you.
He has, big time, my friend.
I love you for coming on. And I just thank you for doing this interview with me. And I want you to keep us updated, okay? And continue to be strong. And all of you out there, if there's any way you can reach out to Kelly, help him out, even pray for him, encourage him, send just a thank you to him. All that actually really does help. It keeps people strengthened and encouraged when they're battling. And, I've said it before, I'm going to say it again. In this, because you're fighting for everybody's civil liberties, including the people that currently are coming at you. And I've always said that's loving your enemies. You're fighting for the very liberties, for the very people who are throwing rocks at you, and yet you're still fighting for their freedoms too. And that's
what we're supposed to do. That's supposed to do as Christians, my friend. That's what we're supposed to do.
I love it, man. Well, thank you so much. I can't thank you enough, bro. I look forward to seeing you and talking to you again. And again, can't thank you enough for doing this interview with me, man.
Thanks. God bless you, buddy. Thanks, Shade.
Grace and peace, bro.